welcome to the second session of today's. I'm privileged to run the second session on women, peace and security, and how to break the barriers and have more women in combat. I'm absolutely happy that so much effort has been put to female empowerment in this conference, and we will try, together with our distinguished panelists, also put some more ideas on how to break those barriers using their vast experience. So. We only have 60 minutes to discuss questions that would probably take us days, years to really have them discussed in details. But I'm hopeful that this discussion will inspire you for further work and for more inclusion, more integrity of women into the security arena. So with no further ado, let me introduce you to Lieutenant General Francis Allen, a senior officer serving at the Royal Canadian Air Force, the Vice Chief of Defense Staff of Canada. Welcome, Colonel Ludmila Kulczycka, to my left, Security Service of Ukraine. Happy to have you here. Ms. Vinita Klein, Head of the NATO Information and Documentation Center. And last but not least, Ambassador Sharon Rapaport-Palgi, the Israel's ambassador to Latvia. We were supposed to be joined by a high-ranking representative of Israel military, but the duty calls. So I'm very pleased that, Ambassador, you have found time to join us and to bring us a little more to what's happening in Israel now, and we will be happy to hear that. I'm Magda Jakubowska. I'm the Vice President of Respublika Foundation that is a mother organization for analytical and strategic platform Visegrad Insight. You may know us from the campaign that I waged a few years ago, which is called Women Are NATO. I kind of partner campaign towards We Are NATO, so to bring more women, more attention to women in security. As I mentioned, we have only 60 minutes, so please ask your questions at the Slido. I'll see them here, but you can also raise hands, and we will leave some space for Q&A at the end of the session. But let me proceed with the discussion. I wanted to ask first and foremost on the state of play in Ukraine, how much women are engaged, because that's very practical to share how what's the female role in the battlefield now.
First of all, I want to thank not only for participation in this conference, and also I appreciate. I want to thank Latvia and other countries and other people. I would say whole civilized and democratic world, whole peaceful world for support for Ukraine. That is the most valuable thing that we can get from outside. Material thing, and also something in what we see on the streets of Riga, for example, Ukrainian flags. It's we know that this war, Russia against Ukraine, Russia against whole the world, it's war not only for territory, it's war for our minds. That is the first. And what about our state and what about state of play about women in Ukrainian army and Ukrainian security and other defense forces? As you know, we have many military formations, not only army, but and also we had 2 waves of women coming into our army. It was 9 years ago, and it was last year. I can't say it was gender policy, really. It was only our willing. We feel the same. Women and men, we were forced to go and to take our weapon in our arms and to fight for our country. And now we have much more than 25% of women in our military forces, different forces, because in some formation we have more, in some a little smaller. But, and also, it's quite high because our women, we are not only on tanks or only with rifles in our hands. You know, this war is a war of drones, of communication, of information. So women and men are in the same conditions, really. But previously we had some good things. It's equal education for men and women. And also when I pretended at my appointment, there were no difference for women and men. The demands were the same. So I would say that equality is the core. Possibilities, equality, education, all that things, they helped us to feel free. And if young girl want to go military, she can. It was just with me. It was just with my friends in military, in my organization. As you know, I'm from security service. We are at the same position. We have all the same possibilities, so we can use it. And also, as a woman, as a woman, we can use our soft skills. And it's good idea. And we have good chances. So that's about women in our country and in our military.
Wonderful. Thank you so
Thank
much. Also from the battlefield, I wanted to ask you, Ambassador, about the role of women that women play now in the situation Israel is now on.
Well, thank you very much. And I also wanted to take the floor and thank our Latvian allies for standing by Israel and so many countries who support Israel in this very difficult time. As you know, we just experienced a horrible massacre in Israel, a war launched by Hamas terror organization, really using ISIS methods, mainly against civilians. And within this horrible situation, I find it extremely inspiring to see the role of women. I want to share with you a story of Or Ben Yehuda. Or is a colonel in the infantry unit. This is an infantry unit that was established in 2000 for men and women combats together. They also have their own only female tank unit. It's only manned by female. This unit was alerted on the 7th of October when there were missiles fired at Israel and more than 1,500 terrorists and mob from Gaza infiltrating Israeli communities. She took only 12 people from her force. She deployed other around the border, and they went to one of the posts called Sufa. When they were there, they realized this is nothing they ever encountered before. As she was the highest ranking woman, highest ranking officer, not only woman, in the scene, she managed a 14 hours shooting battle with more than 50 terrorists. They were 12. She was also herself, of course, engaged in battle, killing terrorists. Later on, there was a helicopter trying to assist them. She was managing the scene, telling them exactly where to shoot. Afterwards, an equivalent of the, let's say, naval sea, how do you call it? Naval sea?
Maritime?
Maritime, the commander unit joined in. She was instructing them exactly what to do. They were fighting for 14 hours and they actually saved a whole community. Not only them, but the tanks that I just explained, that there are only women teams in these tanks, they were protecting 4 communities. They were shooting whatever they had, and when they had nothing else to shoot, they were just ramming with their tanks and trying to run over terrorists. And these are really heroic acts of women, and I think if ever anyone had a doubt about the contribution of women fighting in war, I think there should be no doubt anymore. I was also in the Israeli army. I see the contribution. We have compulsory military service for many, many years. 86% of the positions in army are open to women. Of course, in reality, we find there are many challenges that maybe we can talk about later, but I think women's role is invaluable.
Wonderful, thank you. General, how is it organized in Canada?
Well, in Canada, since 1989, all occupations have been open for women to participate in. And I would say since, I think it's around 2001, when finally submarines, we had first women on submarines. That was probably the first time that we really had all occupations that were open. But we do only have 17% women in our military. 17%. We have a goal of 25, but it is challenging to reach that. And I would say that for the in the military, the majority of our women are focused in about 11 main occupations and not evenly spread across all occupations, even though they are open. And so for us, because we wish to make the military a career and a choice and a service to your country that is something that is appealing to everyone and appealing to women, we need to make sure that we are communicating about the benefits and the values and the experience that can be had across all of these occupations and not just in the traditional ones. But to do that, you've got to be able to explain the role, explain the functions, and make sure that people feel they're going to be welcome in those environments.
Right. Yeah, we already mentioned the question of equal education, and yes, thank you. From the perspective of NATO, because you represent now NATO, and but you also have been working with many different international organizations. How would you see it? How important it is that women were equally represented also in the security arena?
Thank you for the question. And it's first of all, it's very nice to be back to my homeland. So because I was born in Latvia, in Riga. So and also just a short story to understand how I fit into this distinguished panel. Actually, in late 90s, when I just graduated from university, I joined a Latvian armed force. I joined as a press officer at that time. And that was the summer, September, when Latvia for the first time organized an international military exercise. And since I had joined the armed force and was also part of the exercise, and of my small size, I went to a tailor and they made for me a field uniform tailored for me. And that's why it's, and since then I understand how important it is for women that field uniform or equipment, that body armor, that all these things fit, that they don't restrict your movements, that you can completely fulfill your functions and your duties, and that it's tailored for you and you feel comfortable in that. And since then I also as a person who likes to write and a person who has worked in public relations domain, and now dealing also with public diplomacy and working and leading a NATO Information Documentation Center in Ukraine, for me personally it's very important to make space for women and to create space that they can raise their voice and they can express themselves. And speaking figuratively, that women is a visible battalion. We know about the movement in Ukraine, Invisible Battalion, also established by Maria Berlinska, but it's important that women are visible. And also now being part of NATO Information Documentation Center, we engage with Ukrainian military and defense and security sector. And we also advocate and give space for women to advocate, and especially when it comes to policies. And women peace and security agenda is on top. And from my side, I can say that Ukraine does pay lots of attention to the implementation of women, peace and security agenda, and that is on Ukraine's one of the Ukraine's top priorities.
Thank you. I'm sorry, but we will have to talk about the challenges women face, and why is it important to kind of try to sit down like in here and overcome those? So, General, would you start maybe?
Certainly. I think it is important to talk about the challenges because we haven't. So when we opened up occupations for women within our military, and I'm sure in all militaries across the board, it was about how can we make women fit into the organization, as opposed to how do we create an organization in which people fit and which address supporting them, but in a way that allow them to carry out the mission, to carry out the objectives that we have to do going forward. And so it is trying to flip that switch between how do we make women fit into the organization to how do we actually adjust the organization to allow for the diversity of people and skills that we need within the military. We seem to be able to live and grasp quite clearly that for us in Canada, there are 5 domains in warfare: air, space, naval, sea, and cyber. And we all seem to be able to recognize that operationally, each of these environments contribute differently to the operational output that you want to have. Each of them have their benefits. Each of them can contribute towards that. And we've accepted that operationally. We have to be in the same thing with respect to our people and say, all sorts of people with different backgrounds, different skill sets can contribute positively to the organization and to the work environments. And so we need to make sure that the organization, which was built for a very homogeneous group of individuals, is adaptable and can take into consideration the needs of those communities.
Thank you, very important. And how is it in the battlefield? What challenges women face? These are often very severe situations. Would you, Ambassador Teresa, a little more?
Well, I can say that in the current war in Israel, we saw the very high price that women, girls, and children pay in the act of war. So I'd just like to describe the situation so we can understand what happened. When those terrorists entered the communities and also the outposts, you know, these outposts, they have the women soldiers who do the lookouts. It's mainly women soldiers. They were all killed. All of them were killed. But it's not only the soldiers, it's also the civilians. When they entered into communities, they targeted everyone who was there. Everyone, families, children, infants. They burnt people alive. Whole families were executed. People were tortured. There are clear evidence of people tortured. And of course, many were kidnapped into the Gaza Strip. 203 we managed to identify so far. About half of them are women and children. And I think you all saw, and it's evident on social media, and also by medical reports and testimonies, including the videos that the terrorists themselves put online. There were cases of rape. There were cases of naked bodies loaded into trucks, women paraded as trophies in the Gaza Strip. This is a very heavy price that women and girls pay. But I would also like to say that, to me personally, it made clear that if we think that by not putting women in the front line as combat soldiers, we're protecting them, it's clear that nobody is protected. In times of war, nobody is protected. Not the female soldiers and not the civilians. And there are specific UN resolutions addressing these issues. There's Resolution 1820 that relates to sexual violence as act of war, as human crime. And there's also Resolution 1325 that relates to gender-based violence as something that should be specifically addressed, and women and girls should be protected. And I think this is a very complicated issue that we need to think about.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. You can see you all shaking. This year and a half of this experience, this has been very much for Ukraine.
Unfortunately, in Ukraine, we have the same problems. We are talking that we also see those sexual crimes as crimes against humanity. It's not against our country; it's against whole the world, against humanity. So, and I wanted to. It's the one side of the coin. As you know, many Ukrainian people now are forcibly removed to Russia, and we can't return them all. We are trying, we are working hard on that, and also we need help to get this work together, because it's who will be the next? Whose children will be kidnapped the next? We were the first, then Israel get those terrorist attack, and our children are not safe. So I want to tell my personal story. It's story of last year, because when full-scale invasion began, I was at warfare. I was whole year on battlefields. I was okay, but my son, he was evacuated to other country, because I couldn't be at my position if I feel he is in dangerous. It's the most the worst thing that I could imagine for me, except of tortures, of course. And after he returned, after half a year, and I saw him at the first time, and one day, exactly it was at the one night, he said, "Mom, do you know that before bedtime I was never thinking of you?" I said, "Why? You forget me?" He said, "No. If I will think about you, I can't sleep, because I just have feeling that they kill you. I am afraid you are dead. My father is dead, and all the day I always did all my best. I did all my studies. Only you be alive." That was the thoughts of my son. He's just a child, but his childhood is full of afraid, full of fear. That is why I again and again said about those children who are in Russia. They live in hostile language. Russian language is not Ukrainian language, you know. If we talk different languages, but native is native. They live in hostile environment. All they feel, it's a fear and to feel afraid, everything. So that's also the challenge. Maybe it's a common challenge for men and women. I know my husband and many other men, they are afraid of their children the same. But also we have this feeling as mother, it's our nature to be, to have such strong feeling about our children. So we are fighting for them, not only for us. That was my worst challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, what can be done, but maybe not challenges like that, because the terrorists are terrorists, but how can we prepare maybe some regulations, maybe some practical educational aspects? How can we prepare women, but also societies, that to be kind of more about security, more about to protect women also on the post, but also as mothers or as just women as such. Maybe from the NATO perspective, maybe some campaigns that would help, or.
I think it's important to speak and to raise a voice and be brave. One more thing, I used to work in the Western Balkans, in Kosovo, more than 4 years, and then I was advising Ministry for Kosovo Security Force. And there were women also serving in Kosovo Security Force, but again, I wanted to help them be more visible. And then we also thought of how to do that. And then I came up with an idea, so let's write about these women. And also it was important to show that women in Kosovo Security Force, they come from various, they have of various ethnic backgrounds, so they have of various age, so, and that they come from cities, towns, and from the countryside. And we prepared a short booklet, brochure, where they were telling their personal stories, how they joined Kosovo Security Force. Some of them also fought, were part of a liberation movement when there was a conflict between Serbia and Kosovo. And it was also important to show that that Kosovo Security Force is an inclusive force. That was important. And we made this brochure, booklet, and then we also invited at the time NATO's Secretary General, the Special Representative for Women, Peace and Security, to come to Kosovo, so, and also to present this material. And I think for me, it was very rewarding when, at that time, Special Representative for WPS said, now we can declare that Kosovo Security Force indeed has implemented the WPS agenda. Of course, there is still, and there was still much to do. So, but by these small steps, we show and we create this space. And it's important also in Ukraine's case, as also our colleague already mentioned, 25% of the whole force are women. And it's important that we speak about that. And just, I'm also proud of the fact that we, around Ukraine's Independence Day in August, we released a documentary supported by NATO Public Diplomacy Division. And the title of the documentary is War is, and in the caveats, not women's business. And in this documentary, we are showing women who are doing all kinds of jobs, because Ukraine also, if I'm not mistaken, 2018 opened all combat positions to women. And through personal stories, and for me personally, it's always important to show this personal touch, personal attitude, and personal stories, that women in Ukrainian women, they do amazing work, and they are equal, and they serve and they contribute to country's freedom, independence, with their skills, with their knowledge, with their experience, and with their competence. And I think this factor is very important for all armies. Thanks.
Thank you. I wanted to touch upon Canada, because you are always a leader in equality and in bringing diversity. What are your tools in
So in response a little bit to the question that you just asked about, so what do we need to do? I think we actually just have to think about what is the action across all of the planes of societal engagement on this. So politically, what do we need to do with respect to calling out the atrocity that exists and the inappropriateness, the issues associated with gender-based violence, and that it has no place in our societies, and what are the consequences? How do we try to prevent it? How do we try to deal with it when it happens? And how do we hold people accountable for it when it takes place? And that is important. And so the UN resolutions are important because it starts to set an international tone. That, of course, unfortunately, doesn't mean that it doesn't occur, because it does. And so then what do we do about it? If we then take it to an institutional level, what do we do as an institution, as practitioners of warfare, to think about the impact of warfare on women, in children, in societies that we're at, and to think about how in our objectives and in the actions that we are going to undertake as militaries, how do we need to deliberately think about the consequences of war on the societies in which we may be called upon to actually act. And going forward, at the operational and tactical level, the implementation, I think, of gender advisors into operations, which is about considering the impacts around your planning and how are you thinking about how what your plans may be will impact the society in which you live or in which you're operating, and how do you need to take that into account in advance and afterwards, because sometimes you're suddenly coming in after. There's been some really difficult times that have taken place. And so having this thought and having this engagement across the institution in an operational environment, and then as an organization, how do we want to promote the organization as being one in which women feel that, and any diverse community feels that they have a place and have a voice and will have the opportunity to serve. And that means thinking about what are the barriers that exist to service, and how do we try to support and knock down those barriers that we all face in our lives at any given point in time, whether it be with aging parents, young children, family obligations, educational aspirations that anybody has. How do we ensure that we're creating policies and environments in which we can address that not everybody is the same, not everybody has the same needs, and how can we support them to stay and serve in their organizations rather than feel that they must choose between the things that pull us into different directions and service to their country. And so thinking about how you work across all of these planes, I think, is the challenge, because nobody's got this. No one's written the textbook on any of this. All of us are learning our way forward. And I think the fabulous part is that we're learning from each other and seeing what works with each other and what is challenging, and how do we want to try to implement that within our own environments.
Absolutely. We will share best practices as well in a second. Ambassador.
Yes, also to say that I believe that the visibility of women in the Army, just like we have here amazing women, having this panel is also very important in itself, but the visibility. So in Israel, because we were kind of born into this notion that each and every one of us will join the Army, we are very much used to having women soldiers on the streets. We see women with their weapons. We see everybody going through basic training. So the burden, it's very important that it is equally taken upon in society. Plus also women have very important jobs as educators, also at home with their kids. When their children see that their mother is in the Army, when they explain to them what they did, the children grow up with this notion that, yes, I can also do this. A girl looks at her mother or her sister and says, okay, I will join the Army. And, there are Army traditions, like my sister did basic training for boys, and I said, I will also be, and you have to develop this in society, this awareness and these traditions of of taking part, of defending your country, I believe it's extremely important.
Thank you. Would you add to that as well?
Also, I would also add some, also my experience, and again my personal story about the last year and about this year. Last year, my unit, which I headed, it was mixed. I have mixed staff. I have men and women under my command, and last year it was the most powerful thing I saw all my service, because we are so motivated, we were so eager to win that we did anything. We did wonderful things, and. And also my girls, they were so good as men were. So I'm really proud of them. And also this year, we used those experience and our previous experience from 2014 to have trainings. We used on the trainings, we have not only mixed teams, also our instructors were mixed. And the results were very positive, because we have the common language, because we have much more coherent units when women and men are together with all those, with all their stuff. And so for us now, it's only task to move on, to go on, and don't lose our speed. Thank you.
Thank you. We already have a few questions in the Slido, so I'll put two together. With an increasing number of women serving in combat, have physical training standards have been modified? How does changes reflect the needs of the battlefield? And what measures are being implemented to ensure that female soldiers have access to appropriate facilities, equipment, healthcare tailored to their needs? How does that look in Canada?
So for us, I would say our requirements for standards for entry and really are focused not on what men can do and what women can do, but what does the job require. And so our selection standards, our entry standards are really about what the job needs, not about what men can do and what women can do. There are obviously sometimes for some occupations, strength requirements, but it doesn't. It's the requirement to fulfill the task, not to like this standard for women and this standard for men going forward. And so I think that focusing on what is the outcome that you need and then setting those as standards is an important way forward. I'd also say that in the way that we take a look at the policies we make, the equipment we procure, we have what we call gender-based analysis plus, which is really taking a look across the board at how do these seats, these harnesses, these plates, these the leg distance that may be between the chair and the floor, how are they going to accommodate the range of body types and the range of body shapes as opposed to one preconceived, which is not true for men either. Men are not all the same shape either, but there is certainly, I think, some scale when you bring women into the occasion. So thinking about all of these things in advance, we don't have any capital projects for acquisitions that come forward that don't require an analysis. You must take a look and say, are there gender-based factors here that we should be thinking about as we set requirements? And so starting to incorporate this into how you do, I would call, the business of defense, and not necessarily the operations of defense. That's an important piece too.
Right, obviously. So how does that look in Ukraine?
So if we are talking about physical training, we have different standards for women and men, really, except for some units, some special forces units. But other standards are different for the gendered. But and concerning the uniform and bulletproof vests, you know that we have women size though. And also last year I asked if I can get XS bulletproof vest. no chance. Yeah, it was no chance last year, but now I have it. And not only me, because only this year we have business which helped us to make this uniform, women uniform, with all those legs, shoulders, and other things which are quite different from men's. Unfortunately, we did it after full-scale invasion, but we are lucky that we have it.
Yeah, better late than never.
So,
thank you. How does it look in Israel? What's the entrance test?
Well, of course, there are special units that will require different tests and criteria for men and women. But I would say we also need to think about it, I think, differently, because there's a certain standard, let's say, for combat units, but do we really need for every combat unit? Are they actually designated to, I don't know, in-depth incursions where they have to carry a lot of equipment? Do they really need to be 180 and weigh 80 kilos to do that? Not necessarily. And though we have these unified standards, we really have to think, okay, maybe in this unit, because otherwise you exclude women automatically. And in certain units, it is not necessary. So like the units I was describing earlier. So we have to give that some thought. Other than that, I really support that we choose the right person to the right job without any, gender
bias.
It's not really bad, yeah, but you really need to have people who are qualified. The other things that we see in Israel, that in some units, it's also a matter of demand and supply. So the most elite units, there are many, many people who are competing to get in, and then the criteria automatically is risen to unbelievable standards that many women cannot reach. But it doesn't mean that this is the actual level that is needed. So also, we have to take all this into consideration. Thank you.
Absolutely. So how important it is to kind of have those standards, promote the job in this sense? How do you see it? Maybe from the communication perspective, because
first of all, I will go back to what we already discussed. So I have also analyzed NATO member countries. So, and indeed, those criteria or standards are also they are different, depending on the country. So, one thing I'm proud of as a Latvian is that, for example, in Latvian armed forces there were never like ceilings or military roles, so which were closed, for women. So all have been always opened. So, and also the fact that 16% of the whole force in Latvian armed force are women. So this is this thing. So and what is important to keep into mind that there can be various criteria, but also we need to take into account. As we already discussed, what is the role, what is the job? So, and that criteria are adjusted for that particular job. And I think it's fair that combat roles are opened for women, and if even one woman fits for that role, so why women should be excluded? So because she can contribute also to the defense of the country, of a country she comes from, belongs to. This is thing, and I think that. When we speak about very particular things about combat uniform for women, I know that when Russia launched brutal war on Ukraine, then many women also responded and they wanted to be mobilized. They went to mobilization centers and said, okay, I want to serve my country, I want to defend my country. But then the thing was that women needed also combat uniforms which would fit. And then there were a couple of non-governmental organizations who started fundraising, and one of them, and I know, I know a person who started this movement or social action on women now. So they were doing fundraising, and they were tailoring and making uniforms for women. So, and what was smart that was done also in close cooperation with a Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. So, and because the fact that the Ministry of Defense was behind it, so it was also endorsed. So that made this very nice match, which Ukraine is very famous of, that volunteers help also government structures, government institutions. And there is this very nice combination how society or civil society also contributes and supports and help government institutions.
Absolutely. So, can you share some specific best practices from your respective experiences in countries that you that can be as examples for the others?
And best practices in what types of areas?
In your respective experience, so best practice in a sense where we can advance, we can grow the roles and participation of women in military in your case.
So I think it is really just this across the board thinking about the diversity of people who will want to serve, the diversity of people who are serving, and how we can best support that. When you were speaking about the equipment, I was reflecting on some of the equipment donations that we've made to Ukraine. You know, the ACSV vehicles, we've made sure that they've had the harnesses, because some of the harnesses that existed inside weren't very supportive for women's bodies, and so they designed a new harness system that would be more supportive for smaller bodies inside the vehicle to provide greater security and stability going forward. Equipment and defensive equipment for smaller sizes as well, because it is less prevalent that it exists. And so I think in everything that we do, from the design of our standards, and sometimes we're lazy in our standards, right? We think that the way to test whether or not I can carry a colleague and drag them from the battlefield to safety, we just come up with a test that says this is what you have to do, and you're going to do it in this way. I'll give you an example. We have requirements that we have to be able to, every year in our fitness tests, be able to lift certain amounts and run at certain distances, go up and down, do shuttle relay races. But we would falsely say, and you must do it in this way. You can't use your knee. You can't. Whereas, why would we not allow people to use their body types and the advantages that or the disadvantages that they have to be able to accomplish the task? And it's about focusing on the task. And so I think thinking all of the time about what is the outcome that we're looking for? How do I assess whether or not people are capable of doing that outcome, and how do I support them in executing that outcome institutionally, equipment, everything? Those are the best practices, but it is a challenge for all of us, and it's a massive undertaking. But I think it's what we need to do and learn from each other as we do it.
What about the kind of social aspect of that? Because this, I mean, in many countries, female presence in such a job as military is, as combat is not either not respected or are not found normal. How would you try to explain that this is normal, and how we should advance that? Is it only education? Is it getting rid of the typical traditional role that women have in societies?
Well, I think the challenge that we see is multiple phases. So it is attracting people and explaining what the opportunities are in the very first instance, so that people will see themselves as somebody who could be in that job and somebody who could do that. And so there is an element of attracting and explaining to get people in. And then there is, when we have people in the military and serving, how do we better support them so that they can continue to serve? despite all of the challenges that may come up in life. Going through, how do we create that policy? How do we support them from a training and equipment perspective? So all of those pieces, I think, have to be part of the solution space moving forward. So it's not just one thing, it's people throughout their career, people throughout their lives of service. And maybe there always will come a point where, you know, people make choices and move on to new opportunities. But how do we support people in the very difficult things that we ask people to do in the military, whether you are at war or whether you are training to defend your country? It is a difficult job that we ask people in the military to do.
It is.
Yes, and I wanted to add that as my colleague said about women in army, when everybody saw those women in uniform and those women as generals, colonels at the other points, and that they do the great job, then young girl will think, if I feel that I want to be military, I can do the same. So it's very motivating for other people. All those brochures, booklets, they open women world in military. It's a very important thing also, because the most valuable people are the most valuable. Men or women, both of them. Doesn't matter.
But you, as a mother,
what?
How much you think there could be improvements for mother in a military service?
Improvements for mothers in the militaries. It's I would say it's some common things. When I feel that my child is in safety, that I have kindergarten and food for him, that will be quite enough. A good school, all those things that are quite common in our ordinary life. So I can say that military service is so strange. It's only other type of activity. Also, in our country, our state, it needs this activity, because, especially now, because we are in warfare. It was not our choice. We were forced to fight against enemy. But previously, until 2014, we also have the same kindergartens, schools, and other things. So I would say we only have to go on to proceed this movement.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ambassador, how does that look?
I just want to say that the army is the mirror of society. You know, when you look at the army, you see the society. And the more you have different groups, different minorities, and we're here talking about women and security, but gender issue is much wider than just women. Mm-hmm. Today you have in the army other communities who are represented, also from the LGBTQ communities, and they're also there. And the more inclusive army we will have with people with different skills and different abilities, our armies will be much more stronger and much more professional also in dealing and in the creativity that the army can produce. It would be a huge benefit for all. And we definitely need more breaking, women, not only women, but breaking ceilings, also in the Israeli army.
Absolutely. Vignetta, would you add to that?
Yeah, I would like to add, I think it's very important that women in the military, that it's a whole of government like policy, that it's advocated at the government level. It's important that policies are in place for women's recruitment, and very important for retention. It's important that also, regardless gender, but all those who serve country and serve in the military, that they have package and social package, that also, because retention is a very important factor, that after a first contract, people don't leave, but they stay and they continue their service. And And this synergy between civil society and government and military, it's what makes society strong. And I fully agree with the ambassadors that the military is a mirror, and it mirrors the whole society. And the military should mirror that all people of all kinds of skills, because it's a teamwork. Military is a teamwork. And we each contribute with our strengths and our understanding and also our perspective. And the last thing I do like, also Irene Fellin, she usually stresses that that women also bring in a different perspective, and different approach. And also when women serve in the military, it means that the whole force gets only stronger.
Could I add something to that, if I could? And I agree 100% with what you say about the military needing to be a mirror of society. I think the reality that we've seen, though, is that often it's a lagging to the changes that's happened in society early, and we have to work to change the perspective and the culture inside the military to ensure that it continues to reflect how society is advancing around us, because militaries have traditionally been very homogeneous, male-dominated environments, which to make it open to a diverse community, you must put effort into. And so I think it's work, and you need to be able to continuously be committed to that work to make that change. And that's why it's important that we have events like this and we talk about it and we share best practices so that we can continue to make sure that our militaries are evolving to be able to reflect our societies and to be able to allow diverse communities to be able to serve.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We came to an end. Our time is up, but I think it's a great sum up, and I'm happy that we gathered here, that we can share those practices, we can share our ideas, and get to know, to work together and do the work. It's a long-term process. So we're already, many of us are on a good track, but I'm hopeful for the next steps. Thank you very much. I think ladies deserve an applause for the insights.
Thank you.
Thank you.